for what's next. He's brought to us by Landis Block. Create your very own jaw-dropping backyard paradise online at landisbc.com. Adam Schefter joins us. Schefter, you might help win some people some Sixers tickets. I'm sorry that I didn't tell you that beforehand.
Yeah, that's a new promotion. Hadn't heard anything about that. That's kind of cool, and hope somebody enjoys the Sixers game there.
And I'm sure they will, because hopefully the big man's back at that point.
Yes.
Schefty, a great win for the Eagles on Sunday. By far their best game of the season, and it's something that I keep on going back to. That bye week probably could not have come at a better time for the Eagles, because health-wise they needed it. And I think mindset-wise and game planning-wise, both on offense and defense, they needed it.
Well, it just looked like they came back refreshed, revitalized, and again, what is the record? 6-2 right now.
5-2.
5-2. Yeah, I don't know that there's been a 5-2 team that's gotten more negative attention and more negative conversation than the Eagles in recent memory. Like 5-2 is pretty good, and it's been a little bit bumpy, and I guess I can understand some of it, but 5-2 is where you want to be. I mean, they're where you want to be right now, getting ready for the last 10 games of the season.
We said it again to you a couple weeks ago about Vic Fangio and the impact he's having. I don't think any of us saw a top 7 scoring defense and the impact that Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are having. It truly is. Is he usually this good with young players being really thrown to the wolves right off the bat of a season?
Well, again, and we've said this is not anything new, but, I mean, you're talking about, I think, one of the best defensive coordinators in history. That's just how I think of Vic. He's really good at what he does. And so, that means getting the best out of the veterans. That means getting the best out of young players. That means pushing the right buttons, whoever it is. And so those guys are talented players. They were high draft picks. Vic knows how to deploy talent. He knows how to use talent. He knows scheme and everything like that. And I don't think it's surprising to see. And sometimes it takes a little while for these pieces to come together, for rookies to pick up the system, for him to figure out how to use them, like in any case. And obviously it's working out now, and it seems to be trending the right way, and you just hope it continues that way.
Something we celebrated yesterday during the show was how great A.J. Brown, Devonte Smith, Dallas Goedert when healthy, Saquon Barkley are for not complaining when their number might not be called that day. They're very talented players, but the ball needs to be spread around. You see players all the time voice their frustration when they're not getting the ball enough. Is this who do you give that credit to? The individuals involved, or is it the culture set by the head coach and the organization?
I'm not going to say it's not the culture. It's all part of it, but I think it's the individuals more than anything else. And, again, I think back to when I visited the Eagles this summer there, and it was just, a half day, fine. But you're around a lot of people, you talk to a lot of people, and there were a couple of things that stood out about that day. Number one, in talking to people about Devonte Smith, I remember, I don't think I'm throwing him under the bus by saying this, but Big Dom's like, that guy, speaking of Devonte Smith, is as tough and as popular as the guy we have. Raved about Devonte Smith. And I think that gave you an idea of how well regarded he was in that organization, in that locker room. I think they loved Devonte Smith. I met A.J. Brown. I'd never met A.J. Brown until that day. I could not believe how impressed I was with him. I love that guy. I'm like, that's my kind of guy. He was professional. He was on, the guy, I was really impressed with A.J. Brown, getting to meet and talk with him for a brief period of time. And so those are two guys, and Dallas Goedert's a worker. So to me, it's just the makeup of the individuals, first and foremost, deserve the credit. Now, you're put into a culture that helps and enhances that, of course, but it starts with who you are. People are who they are. And we can go to other receivers and other teams who have complained, and that's how they've kind of grown up. We're living.
Yeah, I use Jordan Addison as the example because he posted the Instagram free 3 and then tried doing the whole, you guys are blowing this out of proportion. But, he's a competitor. He wants the ball more, but he also has to realize he plays with Justin Jefferson.
Well, here's the issue, and remember having this conversation with a couple of coaches recently, but they're like, these wide receivers want the football because there's such an emphasis on targets, and targets equate to catches, and catches equate to contracts. And the wide receiver money's gone crazy. And so there's a lot of pressure on these receivers to come up with these catches, and you got friends and family, man, they ain't getting you the football enough. And we're living in a fantasy football media world, and fans are writing in, man, you let my team down, need more from you. Guy wants more. And it takes a very grounded, strong, disciplined individual to not complain about the amount of targets he gets, especially when his team's winning. And, I think those guys in Philly, the guys in your locker room, are aces. I really do. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't have a bad day or say something at some point in time, but those guys are made of the right stuff.
Who is the best team in the NFC East today, and why?
Well, Washington's got the best record, so I'll say Washington.
They played one more
they're
game.
On top I don't. But John, that's what it is right now. There's a lot of positive momentum and energy around them. By the way, like if two teams squared up tomorrow, do I think Philadelphia would have a good chance to beat them? Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is do you believe Washington is the better team today?
Well, I don't. The question doesn't matter because they haven't played yet. They're going to play.
It matters to me. Come on.
Okay, but so the two teams can decide it when they play. Like, okay, so I'm saying to you, Washington has a better record by a half game. They played one more game. They've had the momentum of the Hail Mary. By the way, the funny part of that question and answer would be this. If that Hail Mary hadn't happened, I would say Philly. But the Hail Mary did happen. So today I'll go Washington today. And I reserve the right to change my mind the first time I see the two teams play.
Schefter, we're getting closer to the NFL trade deadline. We'll ask you a few questions based off of that, but I want to start here. Do you think Howie Roseman misread the wide receiver market? I'm not going to ask you if he wishes he didn't make the trade for Jahan Dotson just because he hasn't played well, but do you believe that Howie Roseman misread the wide receiver market, seeing who has been available, who has been traded, and what it's cost to get those players?
Here's the thing with that. Howie Roseman is going to keep swinging. And it's like a power hitter. You're going to hit a lot of home runs, and sometimes you're going to swing and miss. And it's not that he swung and missed on Jahan Dotson. It's that the price at that time was greater. So it's not that he misread it. Well, the price came down on some of these receivers, on some of them receivers.
So did he pull the trigger too early then?
But hold on. But Jahan Dotson also is younger on a cheaper contract. There are benefits yet, and we don't know what he can and can't do. Did he? You know what he was? He was aggressive. That's what he was. Was he overly aggressive? Right now, it looks like he might have been, but that's who he is, and that's what he does. So every big swing is not going to connect, and so far that one hasn't connected so far. But that doesn't mean that Jahan Dotson isn't going to come up and make plays for this team or be a good player. And I still think he's on that rookie contract, so he's not making very much money in the wide receiver world. So, I mean, there are ways you could look at it from that standpoint. Yes. So I know what you're saying. Deontay Johnson went for a pick flop, and Jahan Dotson essentially went, for a third?
Third-round draft pick, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so they paid a higher price for Jahan Dotson, but on Deontay Johnson, let me just say that the price on him tanked because of a few different reasons. That is a isolated case. Like DeAndre Hopkins was a 5 that could go to a 4, which again, still like there was the contract and the Titans paid some of the money, and there's still money left over. Money's a big part of these deals at this time of the year. Deontay Johnson, the Panthers were stuck. They, for various reasons, in a very complex story, had to move on from the guy. And they were going to move on from the guy. And so there weren't many teams that wanted him at all for a lot of different reasons.
Could Doug Peterson get fired twice by the Eagles? Could the Eagles run Doug Peterson out of the NFL this week in his homecoming to Philadelphia?
Well, I keep waiting for something to happen in Jacksonville. Like you can't keep losing at the level they've lost and not get some sort of change at some point in time. Now, again, the owner has stood firmly behind Doug Peterson, so I don't think he's going to do anything right now, but you never know with these owners, and they say one thing, and then a few weeks later they fire their coach, or they fire their GM, or they make some sort of change. And Jacksonville's lost enough and had a disappointing enough season that, to me, anything's possible there.
How aggressive will Howie Roseman be before the trade deadline hits? I know what the answer is always when asked about trades. Oh, well, we know Howie's going to make phone calls. But when I ask aggressive, if I say Myles Garrett is the top, and then, role player is the...
Not happening.
Right.
Not happening.
And role player is the floor, right? A guy that's a rotational end on the defense. How aggressive do you believe Howie will be?
I don't see a big impact guy coming in there. Now, maybe some big impact guy is going to become available. Maybe there's a team that is around 500 that loses this week and then all of a sudden decides to be sellers. These things are always just so fluid. You just don't know. But I'm not expecting your usual big eagle moves before the trade deadline. I'm not expecting that.
Vic Fangio spoke out about it, saying he doesn't think that they work out. Getting the big guy in the middle of a season. He said that on Mike this week.
Yeah, well, again, I don't see the Eagles making a big move. Like, could I see them getting some kind of role player? Yeah, for the right price. Definitely, I could see something like that happening. But, if you're waiting for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or, it ain't happening.
Shefty, last thing. It's Hurts and Lawrence. Last week it was Hurts and Burrow, and that game got flexed out, and this game got flexed out as well. I'm just curious, what's the league saying about a guy like Trevor Lawrence at this stage in his career? Well,
the league doesn't say anything, but if you're saying, what's the reaction around the league, I think Jacksonville in general has been a disappointing team. They've spent a lot of money on a lot of different players. You had the owner come out and say that it was the best roster that he's put together in Jacksonville since he's owned the team. By the way, him and Woody Johnson have both said basically the same thing, and both have gotten similar results. And they just look off. Like, I don't know what it is. They were in the playoffs a couple of years ago. They had that big comeback against the Chargers, and since then, it just hasn't worked out. They've been disappointing. And so the league reaction on Trevor Lawrence is he going to be worth the contract that they gave him? I think everybody's going to see that because we know he's talented and he's flashed at times, but the bang for the buck right now is not there right now, and they need to get that out of him to be the type of team that they want to be.
Shefty, you're the man. We appreciate the time as always. We always look forward to our conversations with you on Wednesdays. Thanks as always.
Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great week, and we'll have a nice quiet day on Tuesday. NFL trade deadline, presidential election, not much going on.
Yeah, nothing going on.
Nice quiet day, Shefty. We can't wait for it. Have a great day, man.